So you've touched on verbal cultivation of consent. You've also talked about the visual. What about the physical? How can you cultivate consent physically? Like, for example, Jason, you were saying like about the smacking of the butt. Do you ever take her hand and put it on your butt to let her know that you're actually in the mood and feeling good about it? What's the physical side of consent for you?
I do. I have done that, and I do think that's appropriate. That definitely speaks to me. There's one element about that scenario where I'm like, ooh, we missed an opportunity for consent there, which is me putting my hand on her unless I have blanket permission already to like, or maybe we were already touching each other. I'm probably going to ask for consent to grab her arm and then be suggestive about that, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think you would grab my hand and put it on your hard, things. I think you would because it's a little bit, I don't know, a few steps further. There'd be some other, like, you might draw my attention to the fact that it's there and then be like, if you're interested in this, you're welcome to it. But I don't think, we don't.
It's like, look what I've got.
We're like real gentle about it,
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more than most, maybe married couples. I don't know. I'm not trying to compare.
Yeah.
But we're real careful about it.
Yeah.
Can I ask why that is? Because I do think there's a spectrum. So I'll give you an example. So I've been with my partner forever, and definitely he wouldn't ask me, hey, is it okay if I touch your butt? I would always be comfortable with him touching my butt, and that's something that I've already verbally communicated. I've also verbally communicated to him, for example, if I'm sleeping, you have consent to wake me up in all of these sexy ways. And if I'm half asleep, I'm okay too. That's not something he guessed at. That's something that we have verbally, I won't say negotiated, I've just delineated that, that's cool with me. And so, there's this spectrum. There's no right, there's no wrong, there's what's right for you. And it sounds like you've figured out what's right for you. Was there a learning curve, or is there a reason that you're a little bit more careful about this?
We have that exact same scenario. She has given me lots of open permission to wake her up and in these different varieties of ways, and to proceed with lots of different activities. And it has been very difficult for me to really embrace that, because I feel like maybe I'm not as open to that as much as maybe she is. I really enjoy sleeping and staying asleep. I often, I wouldn't say I have trouble sleeping, but once I'm down and I'm ready to go to sleep, I really don't enjoy waking up until I've gotten a lot of rest. But she's different. She's fine with waking up and having some sexy time if the mood strikes me, I suppose. And so I have seen two people you're probably familiar with, King Noir and Jasmine. We were in a class that they were teaching one time, and they were on stage doing a demonstration, and King was going to touch Jasmine as a part of the demonstration. And clearly they know what they're doing. They've done this before. They're married. They spend a lot of time together. They're in a very similar space as we are here. And he asked for permission to touch her arm. And that landed so heavy with me. I've never forgot it. Aww. And that meant a lot to me to say, wow, look, here are people that I look up to, that are parents, that are doing similar work, that have a lot of integrity, and they still choose to participate that way. And I get that that's for their relationship, but I think that really spoke to me. So that's my baseline, is just ask for permission unless you really already know that the door is wide open.
Yeah, and I think that's especially important when you're practicing kink. I know King and Jasmine were probably demonstrating something kinky on stage, and that's very, intrinsic to kink practices and BDSM community. It ought to be.
It ought to be. Class. It was a porn and parenting class, so it wasn't necessarily related to kink, but they were in some way, shape, or form describing something that required a little touch and consent. So
I love it.
Yeah, I think it's also important to say that there has been trauma with both of us physically in the past, and so whether it's sexual or just regular physical, and so I think that part of the consent is just really checking in and making sure, because that you're always working through that, and if you go to therapy or whatever, it's something that I think that you might not be aware of, where you're checking out in sex because maybe you've had some sexual trauma in the past. And so I think there's times when I give consent blanketly, but he would prefer that I be checked in during the experience. So he's going to like double check, because it's like, yeah, sure, you said it's okay, but like you're also still trying to work through some of these trauma responses and unconscious behavior that you're trying to change and things like that. So
right.
I think there's like, part of that is like the self-work that we're doing as well. It's just like, why not go one step like more careful and just ask? Because
Well, to add to that, we've had moments where there was definitely blatant consent given, and then mid-act, it felt to me like something changed, and that maybe she was now not able to give or not able to revoke the consent.
Exactly.
And that maybe like when somebody goes into subspace, for instance, they can't always advocate for themselves, and sometimes it takes the person that they're engaging with to be mindful of like, hey, I think maybe I'm not getting the feedback that we were having for a little while there, and now I need to check in again. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're bringing up some very important points. That is, number one, is that you want to be constantly cultivating consent. And as I said, consent doesn't have to be sexy, but it is sexy to check in on your partner and see how they're feeling. So that's a really important piece. And trauma histories are also very, very important. And that really is a reminder that there is no singular way to cultivate or give consent, and not everybody has the same capacity or privilege to speak up in all circumstances, which is, it's really cool that you're saying, I noticed something shift. And that's why, yes, we've got our words. Can I do this? Yes, I want you to do that. But we also have to pay attention to people's body language, right? If they're saying yes, but they're kind of pulling away, and that's not a pre-negotiated dynamic that you've discussed, because that can be, right, in some kinky ways, but it isn't, then it might be time to check in and be like, is this still feeling good? Or even ask if they'd like to take a break. Or better yet, if you're getting the vibe that something isn't working for someone, you ask to take a break. Like, you can always kind of model the behavior for them. And I think that can be very permission giving when they see other people doing it as well.
Right. And then that ends up creating a really deep level of intimacy and trust, which in turn is sexy, at least for me.
Same.
So it might seem like it's all maybe tiptoeing around some things, or it might be like too heavy, but
or it's ruining the moment.
Yeah, ruining the moment or something. But I think it's
like
really important, because if you keep addressing things, then you can keep your partner, everybody's checked in the whole time, and then you're really having these amazing sexual experiences, because you've, I think a lot of times we're all used to doing stuff that we don't want to do because someone made us do it. And whether that's sex or something else, it's just important to keep in mind that you might be saying yes, or you might be not saying no, because you just can't get the words out. And so it's important to just go slow.